Hello and welcome back to Why Capitalism Sucks. This is part 3 of the series, so if you're just joining us, you may want to go back and begin with part 1. There's a link in the description. Otherwise, let's
get on with it!
In our last episode, we talked about how capitalism puts workers in a state of constant conflict with the ruling class of capitalists. Now, let's talk about how capitalism puts workers in conflict with ourselves. A lot of capitalism apologists like to say that capitalism is voluntary. According to this line of thinking, workers are in a fantastic position under capitalism because we can choose to work wherever we want. If your capitalist boss is treating you poorly, or if you're not making as much money as you're worth, well, you're free to quit your job and go work somewhere else. This makes it sound like an individual worker has a lot of power and freedom to improve their situation under capitalism. So let's take a closer look at how things work according to this worldview. A worker gets a job at a factory and the work conditions are terrible. Long hours, bad pay, no opportunities for advancement, hostile managers. This job sucks. Take this job and shove it, says Glip Glop. I'm gonna quit working for you and go work for your competitor. Oh no, says the manager. What are we going to do? This factory can't function without your labor. Glip Glop applies for a new job and gets it. The new factory has higher pay and better conditions and everything works out great. Capitalism is a wonderful system since the arrangement between workers and capitalists is completely voluntary and we're all free to improve our position by changing jobs. If a company doesn't treat employees well, they'll go out of business and other companies who offer higher pay and better conditions will dominate the marketplace. Pretty great, right? Except, wait, is this really how things usually work under capitalism? Is capitalism really voluntary? Do workers really have the freedom and ability to improve their lives under capitalism, or is this freedom merely an illusion? To answer this question, we have to look at the power dynamics between employers and workers under capitalism. In the capitalist system, jobs are distributed just like other goods and services on the free market. Workers are essentially selling their work to capitalists. This seems pretty fair on face value. You want me to work for an hour? Well, you're going to have to pay me X amount of dollars for my work. If this labor market were fair and voluntary, we would expect to see a few things. To begin with, the market would have to have so many job openings that a worker will truly have a reasonable chance to quit their job and seek better opportunities elsewhere if they're being mistreated by an employer. Furthermore, the stresses of a worker quitting should be equitably distributed between the employer and the worker. It should be just as painful for an employer to lose a worker as it is for a worker to lose a job. Otherwise, the employer will have an unfair position of leverage over the worker since the worker would have a lot more to lose than the employer if they quit their job. This kind of balance might theoretically be achieved if the number of available jobs is approximately equal to the number of available workers. If there are 10 open jobs and 10 available workers on the market, it's conceivable that workers would have a relatively strong bargaining position when seeking employment. If this were the case, then workers would be interviewing prospective employers just as much as employers are interviewing them. Heck, if there are more jobs available than there are workers, then finding a job would be a fantastic experience. The worker could even make unreasonable demands from the employer since they'd be a hot commodity on the job market. Now, on the other hand, if there are more job seekers on the market than there are jobs, then the fairness completely breaks down and employers hold significant power over their workers, since the prospect of unemployment would be daunting. In this kind of environment, most unemployed workers will face a long, hard, stressful period of time without income as they're forced to compete with each other for scarcely available jobs. So it seems there are 3 possible power dynamic scenarios for capitalist job markets. There might be more jobs than there are job seekers, which gives workers power over employers. The amount of available jobs might be roughly equal to the amount of job seekers, which distributes power evenly between workers and employers. Or there might be more job seekers than there are jobs, which gives employers power over workers. So which of these scenarios seems most like our reality? If you've ever been on the job hunt for a long time, you know just how stressful it can be. You aren't receiving any income, the weeks drag by as you submit resumes to countless companies. When you finally do get a job interview, it causes tremendous anxiety as you must bow and scrape to impress your potential employers and convince them that you're the most competitive person for the job. Competitive. That's exactly what this system is. Under capitalism, you are in competition with your fellow workers and other job seekers to curry favor with your employer. Your employer is firmly in control of your work life, and you are forced to fight your coworkers for the favor of your employer. With this in mind, it's safe to say that most employers have tremendous power and leverage over employees under capitalism. Losing a job just sucks. Most of us dread the prospect of becoming unemployed, and most workers put up with pretty crappy jobs because the alternative prospect of unemployment is terrifying. Especially if you have to support children, or if you have a medical condition that requires expensive treatment, or you're trapped in a toxic living situation and you want to escape as quickly as possible. Now, I know what some of you are thinking: if Glip can't find a good job on the market, why doesn't he just start his own business? After all, under capitalism, we're all free to become capitalists ourselves and own our own means of production, right? Well, let's take a look at the numbers. In the USA, the average worker makes about $30,000 per year. The average worker only has about $1,000 and $6,000 in credit card debt, and the average worker lives paycheck to paycheck. The average cost to start a business in the United States is about $30,000. Now, sure, you could try to bootstrap a business with less money, but you'll still have to spend months without any income, and the most common reason why new businesses fail is a lack of sufficient starting funds. In practice, the freedom to start your own business under capitalism is an illusionary freedom for the vast majority of workers. You just can't be a capitalist without capital. Some capitalism apologists argue that workers can simply improve their circumstances by getting valuable training and education so they can get jobs that are in high demand. But it's simply not realistic at all for most workers to go out and get a medical degree or a master's degree in engineering. Most of us are stuck with the training and education we have now, and that puts most of us in a situation where we're completely at the mercy of merciless employers who have tremendous power over us on the capitalist job market. And even if you do have one of those coveted advanced degrees and the most valuable skills on the market, there's something your employers have that you don't: the means of production. You might be a world-renowned surgeon, but unless you own a hospital, your employer still has leverage over you. You can be a brilliant engineer, but unless you own your own factory, you'll still be at the mercy of your employer. And as time and technology march on, this situation is only getting worse for people in all job fields. Automation has been constricting the supply of jobs for over a century, and cutting-edge innovations in artificial intelligence and robotics are making things exponentially worse. Things are only going to continue to get worse for workers in nearly every industry as long as we rely on the capitalist job market. To put it simply, under capitalism, jobs are a commodity. Your labor is a commodity. Your labor is commodified. No matter what you do, if you're employed by a capitalist, you are simply a cog in the machine of a capitalist enterprise, and you can and will be swapped out and replaced by another worker or a machine or an outsourced firm in a developing country as soon as your employer finds out it would be more profitable to let you go. Do you ever wonder why they call it human resources? Because that's all you are: a commodified resource to be consumed and eventually discarded by your capitalist employer. This commodification of labor has even deeper ramifications for the working class. Because we're all trying to sell our labor on the job market, we are in constant conflict and competition with our fellow workers. Because our employers have so much power over us, we do not own our own labor. We are confined and restricted and coerced within this hostile environment until we lose touch with our work and our fellow workers. We are left isolated and alone and fending for ourselves in the mercenary market of jobs. Karl Marx called this condition alienation, and alienation can take many forms. Under capitalism, workers are alienated from the products we create. We never have any real ownership over the products and services we generate under capitalism. We produce them for our employers, and they are consumed by other people. Our employers tell us what to produce and how to produce it, and they decide the price they will be sold for, and they take the vast majority of the profits once they're sold. Because of this, the objects we produce are alien objects. The worst part of being alienated from the products we create is that we do not reap the benefits of a job well done. If workers work harder and produce more products in shorter time, we're only enriching the capitalists who own the company. Thus, there's a complete disconnect between ourselves and the products we create for our employers under capitalism. This brings us to the second form of alienation: alienation from our labor. We don't have any direct control over how we create products. We're told what to do by employers, and we must comply with those instructions or risk losing our job. We don't have any say in how work is organized, and we do not own the means of production. We're just cogs in a machine owned by someone else. Because our work lives are so thoroughly controlled by our employers, we are truly alienated from our own labor. As Marx puts it, under capitalism, work therefore is not voluntary, but coerced, forced labor. Now, because we must compete with one another on the job market and on the job itself, we are also alienated from our fellow workers. Sure, you might be cooperating with your coworkers in the context of performing work duties, but beneath the surface, you are in constant competition with each other. You're therefore kept divided from your fellow workers. You never want your coworkers to outcompete against you because sooner or later you're probably going to run into a situation where it's you or them. One of you has to be let go. One of you is getting a promotion. One of you is going to have to step on the other to move up or to keep from getting pushed down. Even our managers suffer from this division and competition. Pressure is put on managers and executives to make things worse for workers, to make workers work longer and harder hours, to maximize productivity, and to minimize the amount workers are paid so that they can maximize the profits their employers are earning and secure their own positions within the company's hierarchy. Capitalism has created a dismal situation where the vast majority of humanity are severed from each other and forced to fight it out with each other so that capitalists can earn ever higher profits at our expense. And all of this culminates in the fourth and final form of alienation from our own humanity. Humans are by nature creative and cooperative beings. We are social animals who are genetically programmed to work together to make life better for everyone. Marx describes labor as our conscious life activity. While other animals sustain their own lives through instinctive activity, humans sustain ourselves through conscious activity. What makes us human is our ability to consciously direct our labor in the world, whether we're growing food or building houses or composing music and creating art. Labor, therefore, is simply the process of creating objects from natural resources through conscious thought. Capitalism corrupts the very essence of our species so that we no longer create objects through our own thoughts. We no longer own our own labor. Our labor is directed and controlled and exploited by the capitalists who command us. To summarize, capitalism is simply not voluntary. It's a system of control and domination, and it alienates us from the products we create, the labor we exert, the people we work with, and the very essence of what makes us human. Until we own the means of production for ourselves, we will be in constant conflict and strife with one another, fighting tooth and nail for dwindling jobs as they're automated away. If you're a worker, you're being alienated from nearly everything that matters in human life. You deserve to have democratic input on the job site, and you should be free to cooperate with your fellow workers just as our ancestors did, before the development of arbitrary and unjust hierarchies. You must take ownership of your own labor. But that'll never happen under capitalism, and that's just one more reason why capitalism sucks. That's all for this episode of Why Capitalism Sucks, but we'll be back with part 4 sooner or later, so click subscribe and stay tuned. See you next time.
The big secret is, of course, oil, which has brought a better life to all the people in the USA. But the key to making oil work for everybody is competition. Fellow Martians, I thank you.
Very interesting, Colonel. Oil, huh? Sounds splendid. But that, what was it? Competition. Not our kind of thing at all. Why, competition is downright unmartial.
Oil? We'll have oil for everybody. That's what we need. Oh, boy, oil.
Give me another space beer, Gleep Glop.